Just a couple of quick notes before we get started here. As you just heard, the event is being recorded this morning, and you can help things go smoothly by muting your line and using the chat function for your comments or questions. You're joining us for assistance for urban farming in Pennsylvania with a focus on financial assistance. We have quite a lineup of speakers and a lot of content to cover, and so I'm going to keep my comments to a minimum. I do want to let you know that we have some additional staff members who are not listed on the screen right now, but they're going to introduce themselves in the chat, and they are here to help answer your questions while the speakers are talking. We will also have hopefully just a couple minutes for questions after each presentation, and certainly at the end of all of the presentations this morning, during which I'll read questions from the chat box to our presenters. With that, I would like to welcome Pete Vanderstappen, who is the Acting State Conservationist for the USDA NRCS in Pennsylvania. Pete, would you like to give a welcome message?
Yes, good morning, Abigail, and thank you for letting me kickstart this assistance for urban farming in Pennsylvania. I think looks like the program agenda meets the needs of what we've been hearing from all the small producers in Pennsylvania, and the fact that they may have heard that the USDA is out there to help small urban farmers, but probably what they're finding out in the process is that USDA is a big agency, and each one of our sister agencies has a different function or different things we can help with. Now, I happen to be an engineer also with NRCS, so we have our engineering stuff that we do to help out small urban farmers, but there's all these other groups listed on the agenda there that certainly will play a major role in trying to figure out which one of these groups can help you out the most, whether it's NRCS, FSA, RD, NASS, PDA, and excuse us for all our acronyms there. You'll have an opportunity to figure out what each one of those are as these speakers go through their presentation. For NRCS, we've been working on this urban stuff for the last couple of years, and I think last year was the first year that we rolled out to actually extend the urban ag to 10 different cities across the United States. And Pennsylvania is blessed in the fact that we have opportunities for those growers in Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh. So we have 3 out of the 10 cities. So I guess we're fortunate on that aspect. And the sign-up program for EQIP, our Environmental Qualities Incentive Program, started last fall, and it's currently going on. And you'll certainly hear a lot about what we can do in that program with our Diana there, our speaker for NRCS. So I think this session really brings everyone together, and certainly will give all you folks an opportunity to hear which different agencies within USDA can probably help you out in a lot of your needs and concerns. And I think without dragging it on any further, I think I'm going to pass it on to our next speaker, back to Abigail, and hope you folks learn a lot today, listen, and hopefully we're listening to what your needs are, and hopefully some of your needs and questions will be answered today. And with that, I'll pass it back to Abigail.
Thank you, Pete. I do have on the screen just a couple of additional resources that we're not necessarily covering today, but I wanted you to have these links. I will put this up again at the end of our presentations close to noon today. And with that, I would like to go ahead and pass it to Diana Estades, who is District Conservationist in the Harrisburg area. She covers all of Dauphin County. Diana.
Yes, hello, good morning, everybody. Give me just 1 second while I share my presentation. Okay,
thanks, Diana. We can see your screen. Yep, okay. We can see you. We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Abigail. I'm Diana Estades. I am the District Conservationist in the Dauphin County Field Office. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about what we NRCS are offering for urban farmers. So just a little introduction of who we are and what we do. NRCS, we always say we're helping people help the land. And we basically help farmers and producers address resource concerns that they have in their land. So here's a little bit of, some of the other things we always kind of mention. NRCS provides like one-on-one personalized advice. We help people make investments in their operations and local communities. NRCS generates, manages, and shares the data, technology, and standards to help make informed decisions. So we work with you on what you're trying to address, and we help you make the right decision, both benefiting you and the environment. So just a little overview of the main 4 programs that NRCS utilizes to provide financial assistance to growers. So we provide technical assistance, which would be just, talking about what you want to do and giving recommendations and developing a conservation plan and so on. And then we also provide financial assistance, which would be we will provide funds to address and implement practices in your property or farm to address the issues you're having. So 4 main ones, and I know they're acronyms here, and I'm going to go into each one here in a second. We have AMA, CSP, EQIP, and RCPP. I'm going to go into the 2 ones that we don't use as much for urban growers, but that could be used, and then I'll go in deep into EQIP, which is the one that we would probably use if you're looking for assistance. We have CSP, it's Conservation Stewardship Program. With this program, I always say we're kind of rewarding you for the good that you're doing. This helps producers maintain and improve their existing conservation. So you kind of get a payment for maintaining what you're doing, and then you will adopt a new practice or enhancements to kind of improve and go above and beyond of what you're doing in your property. So like I said, this is based on the current management and plan management. There's a minimum payment of $1,500 a year. And then this is a 5-year contract. So you will have to sign a 5-year contract, and then you'll get a yearly payment of a minimum of $1,500 a year. And then it would include additional payments of the new practices or enhancements that you are adopting. And this program also includes practices and enhancements, which there's a difference between each one of them. But I could provide additional information if this is something that is interests you, or do you think it would fit your operation. We also have AMA. This helps producers manage financial risk through this diversification, marketing, or natural resource conservation practices. With this one, we usually address like irrigation practices, even high tunnel. So this would improve your water management structures or irrigation structures, like I said, high tunnel, swim breaks, and so on. And this one is a yearly payment limited to $50,000 a year. As I go along, you're going to see that there's differences between the programs. One that would be really noticeable for like urban producers is that we do not fund new irrigation systems through EQIP, but it is an option through AMA. So now I'm going to talk about EQIP. This is the Environmental Quality Incentive Program. This is our most used program to provide funding for farmers. This one is based on our research concerns. So there would need to be a need, and then we would kind of address it with this program. It's a set payment amount, so there's a set payment for the practice. So for example, if we're going to pay on a high tunnel, there's a set payment that we provide for the square footage of that high tunnel. It's sort of like a reimbursement program. The practice will need to be installed and certified by us, and then we will provide the payment. And it usually comes within 7 to 10 business days, direct deposit to your account. So it's not, something that takes a while. The benefit with EQIP for urban producers and socially disadvantaged is that if you're just kind of starting, you haven't been a farmer for more than 10 years, you're able to receive the historically underserved payment rate, what we call HU. That means you will get a higher payment. And within that same benefit, you could request an advance payment. So like I was saying, the practice would need to be done and certified prior to us making the payment. For beginner farmers, socially disadvantaged, veterans, minorities, if you're getting the HU rate, you could get an advance payment prior to installing that practice. That could benefit you on like buying the materials and so on before. And then once it's completed, we would submit the rest of the payment. I also mentioned that we have RCPP. RCPP would work pretty much the same as EQIP, but this is just a coordination between NRCS and a partner to deliver conservation assistance to producers and landowners. But we will basically be following the same rules. So there's usually a partnership between another agency and the funds will be provided. Sometimes this is local to a county, or it could be statewide. It just depends on what's the partnership and what they're trying to address or provide. And then with EQIP, we this year started what we call the Urban Conservation Fund Pool. So within EQIP, we have different fund pools that we cover applications under cropland or livestock, and then farmers kind of compete within that fund pool. For the Urban Fund Pool, this is designated to the areas in Harrisburg or cities of Harrisburg, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh. These cities, this kind of started this year. I feel like we're kind of trying it and see how we do, and it might be expanded to other areas. So the benefits within this fund pool is that you're not competing with the big farmers or anyone outside the city. So when you apply, you're only competing with, your own city. And these fund pools are beneficial for urban producers because it gives you a higher chance of getting funded. Sometimes the research concerns within other areas are wider or, bigger. And then maybe a beginner farmer with a small farm is not ranking higher than the other farmers. So in these areas, you have a better chance, and we're just targeting, the urban communities. So this is something that, you should take benefit of, and if you have a farm or something that you're trying to address, some sort of issue, you're welcome to apply for EQIP. This opened up last fall. It's still ongoing. And then until we kind of run out of funds, but then it will be available, I'm hoping, next year again. We did not receive that many applications. It's new, so we got to work on our outreach. And then kind of like the pandemic hit, so we weren't able to, go out. But I feel like once you find someone and they have a community, that the word spread. So I covered the Harrisburg area. I was able to get about 6-7 applications for basically high tunnels. And, but we'll see. I mean, the word keeps spreading and I keep receiving phone calls. So this is something excited that I think we should mention that, we're trying to address the urban community. Okay, so now some of the practices that we can fund under these programs, I'm just going to go over like the ones that we kind of use the most in an urban setting. So we can fund a high tunnel. There's a difference between a high tunnel and a greenhouse. For the high tunnel, the crops need to be grown directly in the ground, and there's no tables allowed. So, I mean, the high tunnel would extend the growing season. It also needs to be installed on existing cropland, and crops mostly grown in the ground, like I mentioned. This is not a permanent structure, so over the winter, if you're concerned of the snow load and so on, you could remove the plastic in the structure and then put it back up. There is a cap of $7,000 per operating unit, so we will not pay more than $7,000. Like I had mentioned before, it's a set rate, so we pay for square footage, and it just depends on how big you're looking to drill your high tunnel. Our rate changes every year. It might go up a little, it might go down a little. It just kind of depends. But I usually get the question, so I'm just gonna provide an example of what we're paying for this year. So for fiscal year 2021, for a high tunnel, we pay $2.63 per square footage. And then just to give an example of the difference between the normal rate and the HU rate, so beginner farmer, socially disadvantaged, and so on, you will be getting $3.15 per square footage. So you can see there between $2.63 and $3.15. So that's just kind of showing the difference between the higher payment rate. Here are a couple more pictures of some of the high tunnels, just to provide an example. We can also fund cover crops. Cover crops can be planted for up to 3 years. They can be either single species or multi-species. We can formulate mix to kind of meet your goal and the needs of the soil. And then we have a cap of $10,000 annually, so we won't pay more than that. And this is kind of helpful just to cover the soil over the winter, or if you need organic matter, we do some compaction and so on. So cover crops could be really beneficial. Here we are into irrigation. This is something that a lot of farmers, when they have their high tunnels or a small farm, are interested in for like the vegetables or flowers. So like I was mentioning, EQIP does require an irrigation history for us to be able to improve the system. And my understanding is that AMA does not require that irrigation system. And then there must be a suitable water source. So we need somewhere to get the water from. And then we do require an irrigation. Yeah.
Can I ask you to pause here for just a moment? Juan, is it possible to mute yourself? We're getting some feedback from your line. Thank you. Go ahead, Diana.
And then for some of the practices, we sometimes require a management plan. For the irrigation system, we will require an irrigation water management plan, and that's something that we also do. Here's some sort of example of what an irrigation system can look. So we have the tank, the holding tank, and then we'll have a pump, and then it would kind of go with the irrigation. So it's the systems, and in some cases we don't pay for like let's say we don't pay for the tank or the pump, or it just kind of depends of what program we're using and what your existing system looks like. So it's we got to go in and kind of talk about it and look at it. So I don't want to commit to saying that we would pay for the whole system, but it's something that we can look into, and it's a possibility. So this is something that just showing you an example of what it could look like, or what some producers have done in the past. I did get this photograph from Caitlin. She's a conservation agronomist from New Jersey. So this is something that she provided me with that they worked before in the past. And then we also can fund structures for wildlife. So we have like bat boxes, and it won't be new structures. There has to kind of be like an artificial structure or something that we're kind of modifying or improving. But it's something that we can do for pollinators. And then we have pollinator habitats. So sometimes producers are looking to have pollinator habitats around their gardens or crops. So we could pay for pollinator habitat, which will be covered on the conservation cover. And we also have a higher, I'm going to say higher payment if you want to include milkweed. So that will be like species kind of targeting the monarch butterfly. So that's something that if you're looking to do, we could help. And there's a lot of monarch butterfly programs out there to attract them. And so this is something that we could also fund. Here's just an example of the conservation activity plans that we could fund that I was talking about when I talked about the water management plans. So we could do like nature management. We can also do integrated pest management. So if you're looking to see reduce, pests in your property or farm, if you're trying to do the water management plan, like I was saying, pollinator habitat plan. So there's a lot of things that we can do. Like I said, sometimes it's a little specific to the property or what you're looking for. So my recommendation always is just, get a hold of your county NRCS field office and talk to a planner and kind of schedule a site visit, and then you can look into what is out there for you, for your specific needs, and what we can help you with. And some of these plans sometimes are written by a TSP, what are technical service providers, and then we would kind of review them, certify them, and then provide the payment to you. Just wanted to mention that there has been changes to conservation programs that were included in the Farm Bill to support urban producers. So we saw that was included in the new Farm Bill, and we're seeing changes on, trying to address the urban farmers. Two things that were included were soil testing and soil remediation. I believe we're working on looking into that and including that in our payment schedule and being able to provide funding for that. And then as a result of the new Farm Bill changes to support urban producers, we, NRCS, here in Pennsylvania, developed that new urban conservation flood pool for Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, and Philly. So, we are seeing changes, and we are acting on trying to provide more support to the urban farmers. So I just want to say, new practices are coming as we look into that, into the soil remediation and soil testing. That is an issue that sometimes we encounter when we are trying to maybe fund high tunnel, because the crops do have to be grown in the ground, and farmers sometimes are a little skeptical about, my soils are contaminated. So that's a little issue that we have, but we are looking into it to see what we could do. Other states have already targeted those issues and have come up with alternatives if the soils are contaminated on what they could do. So, like I said, we're working on that. There are ways for you to get involved. So how can you influence NRCS funding and policies? You could come to state technical committee and talk about, your opinion and what you're seeing that we need to improve or do. There's also a new Pennsylvania Urban Act Subcommittee, which Abigail kind of, I'm going to say run. And we have some chairpersons from the different areas in Harrisburg and Philly. And we are meeting, I believe, once a month. And we talked about, what their needs are and what they're hoping that NRCS has in the future, or what we address. And then we also have local work groups. These are more like county-based, like it says local, and sometimes they have the conservation district, NRCS, and they make up a group of farmers and just talk about where they want their funds to prioritize, and like depending on the fund pools that I was mentioning about, so like cropland, livestock, urban, and poultry, and so on. So there's ways for you to get involved. And I don't know, Abigail, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about the State Technical Committee and the Urban Committee.
Sure. Just keep that slide on the screen there for another moment. So really there's these two manners of direct communication with NRCS in our state, and one is the local work groups, which, as Diana said, it's really county or a couple of counties together based on your local area, and you can influence what the priorities are or identify resource concerns in your local area and bring that to the local work group, which happens once a year. And there's also the State Technical Committee, which meets 4 times a year, so it meets quarterly. The next one is on April 20th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And certainly you can email me if you need the invitation to join that. It's also on our website. And so within the State Technical Committee, there are a lot of different organizations and individuals, farmers included, who are interested in conservation and helping to shape what that looks like with NRCS in our state. In that State Technical Committee, that is the full state, and so within that, there are a number of subcommittees, and namely the one we're talking about today is the Pennsylvania Urban Ag Subcommittee. And we have a great group of folks who are both receiving information about how NRCS and our other USDA agencies work, and also providing feedback, which goes directly to the leadership of NRCS in Pennsylvania. So again, you can participate in any of these groups. There's no basic requirements other than your interest. We like to know who it is that we're talking with. So if you're interested, you should send your name and relevant credentials so that we know who you are. And that's it.
Thank you. And I think that's all I have. So if anybody has any questions.
Diana, we did have a couple of questions in the chat box, so I'd like to cover those now. If anyone else has questions, please feel free to continue to enter those into the chat box, and we'll cover as many as possible in the next couple minutes. One person says, following all presentations, my company uses a patented process which involves planting special biocrops to capture carbon dioxide, provide other environmental services, and then converts the resulting biomass into a variety of bioproducts. Am I correct to assume that we would qualify for all the programs being discussed today, even though we are not growing food?
Good question. I would have to look into that. So I don't know if you have the person's name, and then I can, or I don't know if Pete is still in the line and he can answer that.
Hey,
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, Diana, this is Pete.
Okay.
That's a good question about, so they're adding a product planting. So that's something they would be working directly with the producers on. So that would be we work with the individual landowner. So I'm not sure how that would play into our program. But I would get the information, Diana, and we'll get some more research on it and get back to that folk.
Okay. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. The next question is about crops and why they must be grown in the ground only within a high tunnel. Could it be grown on a seed bed raised about a foot deep? For example, made with wood, stone, brick, or plastic?
So the rules of the programs are that the crops need to be grown in the ground. I understand how farmers usually do the raised beds. We do allow raised beds, but nothing in between the actual soil profile. Like I mentioned, if the reason is because the soil is contaminated, we're working with that and trying to figure out a solution for that. Maybe add a barrier in between the soil and some new topsoil that we bring in. But that's just how it's developed and written, that the crop needs to be grown in the ground. Because the high tunnel, what we're doing is just extending let me go back to the growing season. So, it's just and the rules that they have to be grown in the ground just to kind of take advantage of the actual soil profile, the nutrients and so on, and then extending the growing season, or you're growing something that will typically not grow here, but the benefit of the high tunnel is providing that for you.
Thanks, Diana. And to clarify, yes, you can have a raised bed that is 12 inches or less. And the last question we'll take right now is, are the payment rates for the practices within the urban fund pool the same rate as those within the traditional EQIP? I'm asking because usually urban farms are smaller and payment rate may not be as beneficial to urban farmers.
Yes, the payment rates are the same, unless, like I mentioned, you haven't been a farmer for more than 10 years, or you fall within the categories of beginner farmer, socially disadvantaged, or veteran, or limited resource farmer, I believe is what it's called. So if you fall within those categories, then you will receive the HU payment rate, which would be higher. But there's not a specific higher rate for the urban producers.
Hey, Diana.
Yeah.
This is Pete again, and what you said is 100% true, but we are working on the 2022 payment rates, and nationally it's been identified that yes, on urban farmers, the footprint area instead of being acres could be down to square feet. So we have some new refined, I guess, payment scenarios for small square footage, which means that the payment rates will go up to adjust for that, along with the fact that some of the sites we do, especially in the urban settings, that the cost of mobilization, demob, and those kind of things cost more too to get into those small sites. So you're 100% correct. What we have now, we are trying to influence the payment rates to reflect these smaller sites. So hopefully that will be an advantage down the road.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Yeah, so there you go. Hopefully by this year we'll have a higher payment rate for the urban setting.
Thank you both. Thank you, Pete, and thank you, Diana. Diana, especially, thank you for your presentation. There was a lot of content in there, and you might keep your eye on the chat because there may be some more questions later on. And certainly you have your contact info there. Next up, we have Keith Beatty from the Farm Services Agency, which is part of the USDA. And we're just going to give him a moment here to share his slides. Very good. All right, Keith, we see your screen. You want to test your audio there?
Yep. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keith Beatty. My name is Keith Beatty. I am the State Outreach Coordinator for Pennsylvania Farm Service Agency. And I'm going to just tell you a little bit about what we can offer our urban producers. Okay, there is my contact information. There's our website, www.farmers.gov and www.fsa.usda.gov. Okay, so Farm Service Agency, we're basically split into we have two different divisions. We have farm programs and we have farm loan programs. So Farm Service Agency, we're a part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and we implement agricultural policy, administers credit and loan programs, and manages conservation, commodities, disaster, farm marketing programs throughout a national network of 2,100 offices. Okay, here in Pennsylvania, we have 37 offices throughout the state. 14 of those offices are farm loan offices, so they have farm loan teams, and each of those teams cover multiple counties. A lot of times, well, our farm loan, in regular normal times, our farm loan officers travel throughout their regions to meet with their producers. Philadelphia, since that's our urban um, ag center for us, we is handled by the Bucks Montgomery office. And here's a map of the state, of course. And so our Bucks office is right here. And this office here, Bucks and Montgomery are together. And this office here serves Philadelphia. Okay, so FSA. So we are America's lender of first opportunity. So we're designed to help farmers start, purchase, and expand their farming operation if they cannot get credit elsewhere. We have different types of loans depending on your current situation and what you need to loan for. FSA loan officers are available to answer your questions and help with your applications. So you just contact those offices and they will help you. And FSA places special emphasis on providing loans to beginning and targeted underserved minority and women farmers. Okay, so some of our general eligibility requirements is that you're a U.S. citizen or a qualifying non-citizen national, that you are legal capacity to incur debt, to acceptable credit history, you're not delinquent on any federal debt, which also includes student loans. You have applicable training or experience in managing and operating a farm. You're owner operator or a tenant operator of not larger than a family sized farm, and if you're unable to get credit elsewhere. Okay, so we have some programs that we work with beginning farmers. So beginning farmers is an individual who has not operated a farm for more than 10 years. Okay. If you're an entity, so let's say you're an incorporated or you're an LLC, all members in that corporation, that entity must be eligible for beginning farmers. So if you have a 3-member LLC, all those members must meet that definition for a beginning farmer. Okay, so beginning farmer programs that we have something called a direct down payment farm ownership program. These are the interest rates, the current interest rates. We have a joint financing program, and we also have youth loans, and I'll get to those in a second here. Okay, so our direct farm loan program, we can give an operating loan. So an operating loan is a loan that we give for some people, might need money for fertilizer, their input costs for the year. We can go up to $400,000 on those loans with a term of 1 to 7 years. And you must have participated in farming for at least a year. Okay. We also have farm ownership loans, and that's up to $600,000 with terms up to 40 years. And you must have participated in farming and for at least 3 years, 3 out of 10 years. So the maximum indebtedness for guaranteed loans is 1,392,000. The maximum repayment terms, again, is 40 years for both, for a direct and a guaranteed loan. Our guaranteed loans are loans that are guaranteed by a bank. So a bank will give you a loan, and we basically underwrite that loan. So we secure it and we guarantee it. Okay. So we work with, there are a lot of banks in the state that we work with for guaranteed loans. So our loan funds, they can be used to purchase a farm, enlarge an existing farm, construct new buildings, improve structures, pay closing costs, and promote soil and water conservation and protection. Okay, microloans. This is what I see that might be popular with urban farmers. So they're operating and ownership loans for $50,000 or less. They're simplified, has a simplified application process, paperwork and verification requirements. reduce security requirements, and you can actually use a mentor to replace experience requirement for the operating loans. So if you are working with another producer who's an experienced farmer, or or someone else who can serve as a mentor, we can use that in place of experience. So when we have a microloan, this is a good way to get your foot into the door and to start our loan process. So this will help you start off. So again, if you need input costs for your growing season, this is a great loan to help you with that. Okay. What is needed to apply for FSA direct loan? So we need the type of business that you're running, whether you are a sole proprietor. Again, if you're an LLC, a corporation, we need to know how your business is structured. Type of operation you are. Are you a vegetable grower? Do you have an orchard? Are you a livestock operation? So we need to know that type of operation. Your education, training, farm experience that you have, a business plan. So we need to have you need to have a business plan for your operation. So it's the same thing any type of a bank would require. So we don't help with writing business plans, but there are I think the Retired Service Corps, they can help write that, and that's just people who are retired who enjoy helping others, and they can help you with those programs. Extension office might be able to help you with that also. The amount and the purpose of the loan, financial and production data. So we'll need to have any type of past history that you have for your production, if you have any, and evidence of your sales, your marketing plans. How are you, basically going to pay the loan back? Okay, one other thing, which is a good thing that we do, we have a supervised credit. So that helps in the with record keeping, and financial information again is required at least annually. So every year we do a year-end analysis of your farming operation, and your farm loan officer will go over your operation with you. Borrower training, we offer that. You also one good thing is we have a lot of current borrowers who use us to start, and then once they build up their credit and everything, they're able to go to a commercial credit. So we call that a graduation. And as in with all of our programs, environmental compliance, you must be compliant with that. So anytime you do anything, any type of project, before any of the soil dirt is removed, please make sure you're in compliance with us, and we have forms for those. And I'm not speaking for NRCS, but they would be the same way. Interest rates that we have for April, farm operating loans, direct loans are 1.5%, and farm ownership loans are 2.5%, and they're locked in, so they're not a variable rate. Okay, a little bit more about our FSA guaranteed loan program. So our FSA guarantees loans made by banks to farmers to help producers obtain credit from commercial sources. The bank is FSA's client, so you still work with your bank, you just don't necessarily actually work directly with FSA. The farmer is the bank's client. The loan is made at the bank rates in terms to the farmer, and FSA generally guarantees 90% of the loan with a maximum of $1,776,000. One good program I'd like to see for our urban producers to use is to help encourage youth into becoming farmers. So we offer something called a youth operating loan. So that's designed to finance income producing agricultural related projects. So the projects must be a modest size, educational, and supervised in connection with youth participation in 4-H, FFA, or any other type of similar organization. The project must produce sufficient income to repay the loan, and we max out at $5,000 for that. You must be at least 10 years old, but not yet 21 years of age. So just remember, though, realize that this is a loan. It's not a grant. So the money, so the project needs to be money making. So the youth learns the business aspect of it, and it provides a great experience to the youth, and also helps them dealing with banking and profit and losses. So it's a good thing to do, and I'd like to see I like people to take advantage of this if we could. Okay, so farm program side, we offer something called a farm storage facility loan. Those are low interest loans to upgrade permanent and build portable storage facilities and equipment. So some of these aren't going to apply for urban ag. I understand that, but we can any type of fruits and vegetables we could is an eligible commodity. Any meat, poultry, eggs, if you have that, honey. And aquaculture and hemp. Okay. So, and floriculture too. So we do have several florists who have farming operations, grow flowers, and they're they've purchased vehicles for us to take their their production to market. So again, we could do hauling trucks, which could be refrigerated trucks. Okay, we can do refrigeration or freezer units, so cold storage. We can also do handling and washing and packing equipment. So we there would be some uses, I think, for our vegetable producers, for sure. So some of the requirements that we have is we unlike the farm loan programs that we have, this one's a little bit different. This is run by the farm program side, and it's available even if you can't get credit elsewhere. So we're looking to extend your growing seasons and keep your produce, your commodity in good shape by the time that you sell it. Okay, each loan. So you also have to demonstrate a need for storage too. So, which we can do that. Maximum loan amount is $500,000 per loan, and a down payment is required. So if the loan's over $50,000, it's 15% down payment. If it's under $50,000, there's a 5% down payment required. And again, like all of our loans, environmental compliance is important. If we do have a loan over $100,000 in Pennsylvania, we need to take additional security. So usually we take that as a mortgage, so on the property. So our loan rates for April, as you can see here, I'm not going to go over it, but our terms are for loans up to $50,000, we can go 3, 5, or 7, actually up to 100,000, 3, 5, or 7 years. From 100,000 to 250,000, we can go 10 years, and anything over $250,000, we can go to up to 12 years. And again, all these the interest is fixed for the life of the loan, and we make they're usually annual installment payments are made on those loans. Okay. Again, these are good resources here. So there's our websites. We have another website, newfarmers.usda.gov, which will show you information for beginning farmers. And also, please sign up for our Pennsylvania State newsletters. And you can sign up here at www.fsa.usda.gov/subscribe. And we send out a monthly newsletter from the state, and then also your county send out a newsletter and bulletin. So when we get new news releases and whatnot, we send them out to you. Are there any questions?
Thanks so much, Keith. There are a couple of questions. Do you mind going back one slide so we can get those websites just a little bit longer?
Sure.
I also put your email address in the chat for anybody who wants to reach out to you. The questions that we have, there are two, and I'll just make this quick because I know we're running into the next speaker's time. Any coordination between NRCS and FSA in terms of funding based on producers' financial needs?
So we offer conservation loans. So we can work with NRCS on conservation funding. Great.
And the other question is there any loan forgiveness in terms of unexpected disasters to producers?
There's not necessarily loan forgiveness. We've had loan deferrals so in case of drought, let's say, if we get an emergency declaration from the Secretary of Agriculture, there are different provisions that could apply.
Okay, thank you. And Keith, just one more tiny question. Do we have any word on the proposed loan forgiveness that came up in the news recently?
For historically underserved farmers, yes, we're still working out the details as far as how that's going to be implemented. So there will be news releases going out. So if you sign up for our newsletter, you will see those news releases when we get more information.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Keith, and thank you for your presentation. Next up, we have Dethan Kistler with Rural Development. So let's give Dethan just a moment here to get his presentation up.
Right,
and Dethan, if you want, okay, we can definitely hear you. Perfect.
Can everybody see my screen all right?
Yep, we can see your screen. Thanks.
All right, everyone, I'm Kistler. I'm the Pennsylvania Beginning Farmer Rancher Champion for Rural Development in Pennsylvania. David Foster, our program director, was unable to attend today, but we do have Karen Coons, who is an area specialist out in the west part of the state. Raina Files, who's a business program specialist and the state energy coordinator, who works a lot with the REAP program that we'll be covering later in this presentation, and Daniel Blottenberger, who's our public affairs specialist on the line. And they should be able to help answer some questions you may have in the chat feature. And then I'll be going over some urban agriculture and beginning farmer services that we offer here at Rural Development. The general programs we're going to be covering today, they're going to be guaranteed loan programs and 2 grant programs. Just basic information. Rural, for our purposes today, is a population of 50,000 people or less. There's an eligibility website you can click on here to see where you fall, but there are exceptions for non-rural projects, which we'll be covering in this presentation. And environmental just means that projects must comply with the National Environmental Policy Act to address laws regarding not altering floodplains, adversely impacting certain demographics, etc. And it's going to be required for all programs mentioned in today's presentation. Farm is any place from which $1,000 more of ag products are raised and sold or would have normally been raised and sold during the previous year, except for an event beyond the control of the farmer or rancher. And typically, people file a Schedule F form when they're identifying as a farm. A beginning farmer and rancher is very similar to what Keith had mentioned. It's an independent producer or an applicant entity with 50% or greater of ownership or its membership farming for less than 10 years. So it's not all of the members or ownership, it's just 50% or greater. Priority points are awarded for programs like the Value Added Producer Grant, which we'll be covering later, if you identify as a beginning farmer rancher or socially disadvantaged group, which essentially just makes your application more likely to receive funding. And at the bottom here, I have our rural development website and our PA Twitter handle for your social media intake needs. The 1RD Guaranteed Loan Program, applications are accepted on a rolling basis year-round, so any time of year you can have a case. And actually, your bank would be submitting an application because the bank is their customer, just like with FSA that Keith had mentioned with their programs. Regarding agriculture, we can only use this program if the project type is ineligible for the Farm Service Agency's loan program, so we aren't duplicating effort, or when agriculture is part of an integrated business involved in the processing of ag products. So examples would be mushroom production, nurseries, hydroponics, etc. And just to note, the ag production portion of the loan guarantee has to be limited to less than 50% of the total loan amount, or $5 million, whichever is less. This is not a direct loan program, so the bank does the underwriting process and decides if the additional fees of 3% at closing or 0.5% on the remaining balance on an annual or periodic basis is beneficial. We currently offer an 80% guarantee on our loan guarantees. So essentially what that means is in case of default, rural development would cover about 80% of the losses to the bank. And max loan limits are $25 million or $40 million for cooperatives, but generally we see loan amounts in the $1 to $10 million range. And you can reach out to your local rural development area specialist, whose map will be provided later in this presentation, for a list of lenders familiar with our program, because not all banks participate in it. Regarding certain projects such as food hubs, which there's a resource attached to this presentation, and part of the reason why it's over 100 pages long, or cooperatives doing value-added activities may be located in non-rural areas. And essentially what a food hub is, in brief, they collect, distribute, and market local or regional food products to wholesale, retail, or institutional demand needs. They usually form when ag producers do not have enough product individually to provide large buyers, such as like a school, with a consistent supply of locally produced food to meet their customers' demand. And then they have a variety of different organization structures, so they could be an LLC, a cooperative, etc. So benefits are they may lead to cost savings, so individual ag producers don't need to hire their own staff to sell. They help ensure ag producers receive fair and consistent prices. Some challenges they face, though, due to their organization structure, this can vary, but they may limit participating ag producers' ability to quickly adjust to changing market conditions. And there's also seasonality of operations concerns, but that can be mitigated by adding in some value-added products. We also have Business and Industry Guaranteed Loan Program called CARES Act. It can provide guaranteed loans for businesses or ag production adversely affected by the coronavirus pandemic. The business would have been in operation by February 15th, 2020, and have been viable before the pandemic hit. Eligible project examples are very similar to 1RD, so you could do food hubs, ag production, etc. At the same general process as 1RD, where the bank does the underwriting process, except now you only have a 2% rather than 3% loan amount at closing, and a 0.5% annual fee. We do have a 90% guarantee, though, rather than an 80% with the regular 1RD program. Fund uses would be working capital, so wages, rent, production input, supplies, etc. The maximum loan amount would be not able to exceed 12 times the 3-year historical average monthly cost of eligible working capital expenses, minus any other federal emergency assistance. So say you took a Small Business Administration PPP loan, we would have to subtract that out, or we could go up to $25 million, whichever is less. The maximum term is 10 years, and principal and interest can be deferred for the first year of repayment. The principal payments can only be deferred for years 2 and year 3. You couldn't defer interest for years 2 and year 3. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis year-round from your bank on your behalf until September 15th. That's because the program ends the end of that month on the 30th, and we need some time to be able to review the applications. Now, the Rural Energy for America program, or REAP for short, has no rural requirement for agricultural producers, and that just means that you receive more than 50% of your income from agricultural operations. There's categories you could apply. There's a renewable energy system grant, or there's a loan guarantee component that you could apply for. And the loan guarantee component with all of these is very similar to the 1RD process, where the bank does the underwriting process. It's actually part of the same regulation. But looking at the grant side of things, to pick that apart a little bit better, there's a $2,500 minimum or half maximum up to 25 reimbursable eligible project costs for the project for the Renewable Energy System Grant. Requirements are the applicant must provide at least 75% of the project cost for the grant, or 25% if you're doing a loan guarantee or combo loan guarantee or grant. Eligible project examples would be solar projects, hydropower, wind generation, etc. You could also apply for an energy efficiency improvement grant, and that would have grant award limits of a $1,500 minimum or up to a $250,000 maximum, or again up to that 25% reimbursement. It's going to have the same requirements as a renewable energy system grant, except now you also want to definitely include the past 12 months of energy bills, along with having an energy audit or energy assessment done by a qualified third party. And that's just to demonstrate that you will be saving energy through the course of the project. Eligible project examples would be like heating and ventilation improvements, lighting improvements, so switching from incandescent to LED lights, insulation improvements, etc. And then new for this fiscal year is the energy efficient equipment loan guarantee, which is only available to ag producers. It has the benefit of having less servicing requirements, so there's no annual energy reporting required like there is with, say, the Renewable Energy System Grant. It does have some additional requirements, some additional restrictions, such as meet the energy efficiency building standards for your area, and you should be able to get some additional guidance from that from your area specialist or the bank when you're doing the underwriting process on that. The grant deadline for the unrestricted fund requests just ended here at the end of March, but you could still apply by the end of October here for the under $20,000 grant requests. So if you had a project, a full project cost of $80,000, you could submit a $20,000 grant request by that deadline. Some additional notes here. For renewable energy system projects, 12 months of energy bills are needed. If they're not provided, we'll have to score the project as energy generation, which tend to score slightly lower. So it's generally a good idea to still submit those 12 months of energy bills. And unless you're doing a loan or a grant combination, only one version of the REAP can be applied for per fiscal year. And once the full application is received, the area specialist will send you a letter letting you know that the project may start as long as there's no environmental concerns. However, note if you move forward with the project, you cannot apply again next year since all the costs that you incur would be deemed ineligible in pre-application costs for the next fiscal year. The technology you use must be commercial or available technology, so it can't be something that you just invented in your basement or something. And it cannot, grant funds cannot be used for residential purposes. And regarding the application competition, you compete on a state level first, and then if you're not funded, we'll send it down to a national level funding competition. So there's actually several chances to receive funding for your project, but this is a very competitive program. Now, the Value Added Producer Grant, this is a nationally competitive grant program, so there's no in-state competition, but you still submit your applications to your local rural development area's office or via grants.gov. This program funding is used for generating new products, help create and expanding marketing opportunities, and increase producer income. Some grant award limits are $75,000 for planning grants or $250,000 for working capital grants, and there is a simplified application process for grants under $50,000 where you don't need to submit a feasibility study or a business plan, but you still need to be able to show that you have an increase in revenues and customer base. And it's going to require that owners be active in the day-to-day farm labor, management, and field operations, and you definitely want to go into some detail on that in your application when you submit it. The raw commodity must also be owned by the applicant throughout the value-added activity, so from the growing process all the way through the marketing and selling process. Unless you're doing a mid-tier value chain project, which I have a resource attached to this presentation as well, you can look at for more detail on that. And you must also supply at least 50% of the raw ag commodity being used for the project. And normally there's a 50% value matching funds requirement, and applicants must be currently producing the raw ag commodity. So if you were producing the raw ag commodity for the previous growing season and you're in between growing seasons, we can still entertain an application. There's 5 different categories you could apply for. There's a change in physical state. So say you have apples and you want to turn those into apple cider, that'd fit into there. There's physical segregation, so keeping genetically modified organisms, so GMO and non-GMO crops separate. That would be another category. You could produce something in a manner that enhances the value of the ag commodity. So say you're doing USDA organic or free-range eggs. There's farm or ranch-based renewable energy. So say you have dairy manure and you want to turn that into methane and generate electricity on the farm. You could apply for that. I'm not quite sure how you get away with that in the city, but it's an idea. And then locally produced ag food product. So if you're growing like locally grown sweet corn or grapes or tomatoes or whatever you have, that would be a project marketed and distributed within a 400-mile radius of its origin. The application deadline is via grants.gov. You would have to have it in by April 29th this year, or paper application. It would have to be received at your local area office or the state office by May 4th, 2021. You have to use the project funds within. Eligible project examples of costs would be processing costs, so co-packing or co-processing, where you're having a third party do the value-added processing, but the applicant must maintain ownership of the commodity throughout the process, unless, again, you're doing that mid-tier value chain project. You could do marketing and advertising expenses, some inventory expenses, so cost of other ingredients, salary expenses, product liability insurance, but only for the project-specific product and during the grant period. And eligible costs would be anything incurred before the grant award is announced and the project performance start date. So that's different than the REAP program. The REAP program, once you have the submitted application, you can start incurring costs, and then if you're awarded, then you'll be reimbursed for those funds. With this program, you have to wait until you actually have that award in hand to start incurring costs on your project, and you have reached your project performance start date. Fixed equipment, which is defined as $5,000 or more and having a useful life greater than 1 year, is also ineligible, although we have had point-of-sale computer systems being deemed as eligible costs in the past, even if they exceeded that cost cap. Any type of certifications, land acquisition, construction repair costs, maintenance or depreciation costs would be ineligible. Regarding hemp, CBD oil or CBG oil, which we've recently heard about, is currently not an eligible project until the FDA would approve it or legalize it. But we could entertain applications using the seeds or fibers for a value-added project, though. And just to note, if you have ineligible project costs greater than 10% of your grant request, the entire application will be deemed ineligible, which is why it's important that you reach out to your local area specialist when completing your application. Now, there are some additional changes this year with some COVID-19 funding. We got an extra $35 million and pushed back the deadline to the April and May deadlines here. Applicants can compete for the COVID funds with matching funds set at just 10% of the award rather than the normal 50% matching requirement. And then if you aren't awarded from those COVID funds, you'll be given an opportunity to revise your work plan and budget to include the normal 50% matching funds requirement. And at the bottom here, I have some additional resources for guidance, including more in-depth value-added producer grant presentation by Karen Coons, who's on the call today, that she did in collaboration with Penn State University back in February. And that's just because I was only able to scratch a surface in this limited time for this program. Now, how do you get started applying? Just an eligibility map showing in dark red areas above that 50,000 population cap. So you'd have to fall into one of the project examples I mentioned earlier. So being an ag producer or doing a food hub or something of that nature. And then the contact the area specialists throughout the state. The stars are where the field offices are. And the area specialists can let you know if the project sounds eligible for new program application materials and help answer some questions or provide feedback while filling out the application. But they are not a replacement for a grant writer. They are a good addendum, though. Some items you need to get started, or you need to acquire a data universal number system or a DUNS number, which essentially just lets us track how federal money is allocated. You also need to register with the System for Award Management, or SAM. It usually takes about 2 weeks to be approved. You definitely don't want to wait up until the last minute of the deadline to start to get that process started. and that allows us to check if there's any delinquency on federal debt. You could register, download an application and submit it at grants.gov, or you could get an application from your local area specialist and submit it to them. We recommend that you don't use grants.gov because it won't let you know if you're missing a piece of your application, which would mean that you wouldn't receive funding or be eligible to compete for funding that fiscal year. All right, thank you. And I do want to also go over some beginning farm and rancher resources I have here at the end of the issue. The beginning rancher coordinator and champions for the Beginning Farm and Rancher Initiative in Pennsylvania. Their contact information is here. And I have it separated by the Beginning Farm and Rancher Resources, where I give a website, a brief description, and any contact information that's applicable. And on your Beginning Farm Resources that you can look at in the same type of format. There's stuff for veterans in here, stuff for research, all types of that could be found here. And then with that, I'll taking any questions.
Thank you so much, Dustin, for your presentation. And I want to remind everyone that this was so full of information, but this is being recorded. And also, if you would like these presentations, you're certainly welcome to email any of the presenters or myself, and we can get you a copy. I also want to draw everyone's attention to the chat box because there have been a lot of follow-ups with Karen, Raina, and Daniel with additional links and resources for you, contact information for you as well. So make sure you check that out. Dustin, at this time, I don't see any questions in the chat box. And so I'd like to move on to Charles, if you're available. Would you go ahead and unmute?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Charles. We can see you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Butler. I am the Regional Deputy Director for NAS's Northeastern Field Office. We're located here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. The Northeast covers Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New York, New Jersey, and the 5 New England states. A little bit about me. I like to tell people my farm background, my ag background. I am from Mississippi. I grew up pretty much on my grandfather's farm in Mississippi. I like to tell everyone in the agency that I'm probably the only person in the agency that ever used a mule and a plow to plow up the field, because, you know, I came up in a time where that's what we did. The things that we did on my grandfather's farm, or we grew on my grandfather's farm, we grew, as far as crops, we grew corn, we grew snap beans, we grew watermelons, we grew potatoes and sweet potatoes. As far as livestock, my grandfather sold hogs, beef cows, and we had horses for recreation purposes, and chickens. Pretty much between the hogs, the chickens, and the beef cows, that's how we provided food for the family. As far as my education-wise, I graduated from Alcorn State University with a bachelor's degree in agriculture economics. I have a master's degree from Belhaven University in business management, and I was working on a PhD in urban forestry management from Southern University in Baton Rouge. But the agency, we reorganized, and I had to move to Little Rock, Arkansas, and the workload was so much that I couldn't finish up the schoolwork, basically. Tell you a little bit about NAS. I like to tell people we are the fact founders of agriculture. And we do that by conducting a number of surveys throughout the year. And why is that important to you? I look at the name of the conference here. Is called the Assistance for Urban Farms. If you know anything about farm programs that's offered through NRCS, FSA, Rural Development, ERS, the first thing that they need is justification for their programs. And where we come in at is we pretty much, we're the agency that provides that justification. We provide that data. Basically, 9 times out of 10, NASS data is going to be used somewhere in the justification. Which leads me to you, as far as producers, people in the industry. Basically, our data is only as good as you provide to us, because most of it is volunteer. Basically, we send out surveys to the producers, to the industry, and we ask you to give it back to us. That data is summed up and it's released. The good thing about NASS and our data, and when we release it, it's released to the public, meaning that no one has basically the same information that a large farmer can get is the same information that a small farmer can get. That same information that a politician can get is the same information that a small farmer can get. We do not discriminate against who gets the data, because we publish out there for everyone to see. What's coming? Well, what's new is in NASS, the Northeastern region and NASS has partnered with NRCS, and we're starting a pilot survey. It's called as I look at my notes here, it's called the 2021 Conservation Practice Adaptation Motivation Survey. And basically, it's 4 surveys. Starting on May the 5th, we're going to be conducting 2 of those surveys. They are the grazing and forestry practice survey. And on June the 9th, we're going to conduct 2 surveys, start 2 surveys. It's called the Cropping Practice and Confined Livestock Survey. This is a pilot survey, so it's new. And what I can tell you about that survey, the program that we're looking into for the NRCS is NRCS provided the data, and from that data, they will come up, from my understanding, they will come up with a singular survey working with our survey team, and that would be something that will be conducted every year. But it will be a single survey, not all 4 surveys, because we don't have the resources to take care of all 4 surveys. So that's what's new with NASS. What's coming with NASS, besides our regular yearly surveys that we do, the big folks in the agency is on the 2022 Census of Agriculture. And why is that important to you is, like I say, data is power. And normally the Census of Agriculture is used to write the Farm Bill. So if you are an urban farmer or a small farmer, a large farmer, a farmer of any kind, you're going to want your input in that Farm Bill. You're going to want the resources, give it out to your particular area in that Farm Bill. And in order for you to get that information that you need, or the resources that you need, or programs that you need inside of that Farm Bill, is we need you to report on the 2022 Census of Agriculture. Now, even though I'm saying 2022, normally the Census of Agriculture normally starts almost a year after the year that it says. So normally around December 2022 is when we'll mail out the first Census of Agriculture for 2022. And through 2023, we'll be collecting that data, and we'll be doing data analysis and getting ready for publication. And publication will come out sometime in February 2024. So the best thing that I can say to you in this conference, or any other farmers in any other conference, is our data is only as good as you give us. So if you have an idea for resources that's needed in a particular program, an area, it starts with us getting the data so we can provide that data to justify those programs. One example of I'll give before I end, one example of a program that came up when I was in Mississippi, working in the Mississippi Field Office, was cattle. Basically, Mississippi went through a drought, and the funds were provided through FSA, I believe, that farmers were watering their cows with tap water. So they provided the funds or the resources to the farmers to cover that cost, basically. And at that time, I was the livestock person in Mississippi. I did everything livestock. So I set the cattle number for Mississippi. I did the county estimates for cattle in Mississippi. And I went to a big farm show, and we was talking about reporting on the 2007 Census of Agriculture at that time. And I asked the show of hands, hey, how many of you received these resources from FSA? It was about for 500 farmers in the room. And about a third of them raised their hand. And I asked how many of you all went to FSA to receive these funds, but funds that were gone, basically. And about the other 2/3 raised their hand. Then I asked, okay, how many of y'all actually reported on the county estimates survey that we produced, that we put out? And only about 50 out of that 500 raised their hand. And I made a point to actually say strongly, like, this is why it's important for you to report. Because if we don't have the data, and you're talking to the person that actually put out the county estimates for the state, we can't do anything. So it's just important, for us, and basically everything works together. Our data is used, like I said before, to justify certain programs, especially ag programs that provide resources for the farmers. But our data is only good as you give it to us. So that's just the plug for the 2022 Census of Agriculture, coming from me, Deputy Director here in the Northeastern region.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I really appreciate your investment in agriculture. I think that reflects very well our audience we have today. I wanted to kind of come back to that Census of Agriculture, and I was wondering, could you explain to us how to make sure we receive that census?
Yes, we are always list building. And basically list building is, we have a list of farmers that's massive and is ever changing, because if farmers go into business, they come out of business, they start. And if you are not sure that you're on our list as far as to receive that Census of Agriculture, I'll ask, hey, email me and say, hey, am I on your list? And I can check the list. And if you're not, I can get something out to you to get your information so we can put you on our list. And we go around also, we have state stats in various states. We don't have a state stat here. Our director serves as a state stat. And we go to individual groups of, like, say, just use the mushrooms as an example. Say we may go to the Mushroom Association and be like, hey, we ask for a list. Hey, what farmers do you have going for you? Could you provide us a list so we can make sure that they are on our list? So when these things come around, we can get it out to the people that needs to get it. So it's basically it's just a list building effort by us, but it's also having you as a farmer trust us to say, hey, I've never received a survey. In all the years I've been farming, I may not be on your list. Hey, here's my information. I want to make sure that I receive that Census of Agriculture this time around. And be forewarned, you may grow a certain crop that's just special, basically. Not many people grow it. And you may be on that list for that survey that comes around every time. So at some point we get like, why are you contacting us so much? I was like, well, because you're the only person that's growing this right now, and we need the information. So this is why it's important again. And so that's how we go about building that list.
Thanks, Charles. And that list is absolutely confidential, correct? You don't share that information with others.
That is absolutely correct. Any survey that you filled out for us is confidential. When we produce our numbers or we give our estimate, it's the sum of everyone. And go a step further, like for county estimates, if we have, say we're setting county estimates for corn, and you're the only person growing corn in that particular county, it's one of those where we would contact you and we'll be like, hey, you're the only person growing the corn in this county. We have to ask your permission is it okay if we publish this? Because our rules say we can't publish because of this, that, and the other. And if you don't give us permission, we don't publish. As far as we like to tell people that basically we're not under the fair credit, I forget, it's blowing my mind. Basically, no one can call in and ask for information on anyone with the agency because we're covered under law that we don't provide that information. Meaning that the governor can't call and be like, well, I need a farmer in this county that does this. We have to tell the governor under law, we don't give you that information and it ain't gonna happen. So, and we get data requests in a lot from those people that started businesses and want to list the farmers in around that area, and we have to tell them, no, we don't provide that list at all.
Thank you so much. I don't see any questions in the chat, but there may be some that come up, so we'll get to those in the final couple minutes of our presentations this morning. But I want to say thank you, Charles. That was an excellent presentation. And next up, we have Mike Roth. And I want to point out that so far we've been talking with USDA agencies, and now we have an opportunity to hear from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. So we're talking about a state agency. Mike, are you on? Are you able to pull up your slides?
My audio up. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. So I will share my slides now.
Terrific. It's starting to share.
Okay, great. So let me move this out of the way. Okay. And I'm sorry again, Abigail, is my screen okay for you presenting?
Yeah, it's in presenter mode, but that's okay with me if that's what works for you.
Okay. That's okay. We'll flip it around here. Okay. Hopefully that works.
All right, and you have, yep, now we can see it. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, and sorry about that. All right, everyone. It's great to be with you today. My name is Michael Roth. I'm a William Penn Fellow with the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and very pleased to sort of so we are based in Harrisburg, PA. If anyone is, fortunately or unfortunately, our Urban Ag Grant Program is closing on the 16th here. But I will just say, if there's anyone that is interested in getting an application in by that deadline, if they like what they see on this presentation, I'm more than happy to work with you to sort of meet that deadline or do whatever we need to do. Make sure you can take advantage of this opportunity. I will also just state this is part of the Pennsylvania Farm Bill, so we do anticipate this to happen again in the future. So if you do miss it this round, it's not all for lost. There are some other opportunities on the way. So we'll just go through and discuss some of the things in this presentation. So just a quick overview, the Urban Ag Grant Program is direct funding. It is a reimbursement grant program for eligible applicants seeking to really increase infrastructure as it relates to urban agriculture in the state of Pennsylvania. The grant intends to build upon any sort of urban agriculture activity taking place. And our goal is to invest in the sort of urban food systems, filling those gaps, encouraging collaboration, and bringing any operations that might already be in place to a greater scale. We definitely want to focus in on food deserts and other areas where there are lack of opportunities or lack of agricultural opportunities with this program as well. So just a quick checklist to see if this makes sense for you or a project that you're hoping to do. So you can do that by going to our website here. Bring you for rural Checker County. In County, it lists all the municipalities that are within it and lets you know if it's designated as urban or rural. So if it's urban, that's great. You can proceed with applying to the grant. The other thing is we want to make sure that it's either the applicant is either an individual, partnership, associations, business, or municipal government. So nonprofits obviously in there as well to apply for this grant program. So the funding, one important piece, since this is a reimbursement grant and it is a 50% match grant, you do need to have 100% of the funding secured before applying. So for instance, say you're applying for $10,000, you would need to have $20,000 worth of receipts after, say you're selected to submit to us to show that you've met the 50% match, and so we can reimburse you for the other 50%. The next question here is, if you're funded, would it be completed within a year of the grant award? So if you are selected, we do ask that you complete your project and have receipts ready to be submitted to us within a year of your contract. So you do get that year time span to sort of work out your project. And the other thing we want to make sure is this improving infrastructure in an urban area? Does it support community development or in the project service area? So again, we're not necessarily looking to fund any sort of personal backyard project.
Mike, you're breaking up just a little bit. We're having trouble hearing.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll jump back in here and get this back on the road. Okay, does that look okay, Abigail?
It looks good. Yes, it looks good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'm not sure where my audio started cutting off, but sort of just jump back a question here. So again, you have a year to complete your project, and we really want these projects to be impactful for the communities that they reside in or the business that they'll be supporting. We are not necessarily looking to fund any sort of hobby projects or backyard projects or anything like that. We want this to be engaging with the community, with a school, with a business that would be able to support jobs and things like that, versus sort of the hobby projects. The last thing is, would you be applying for a micro or collaboration grant? So this grant program does come in two forms when you apply for it. So the first is the micro. You can request up to $2,500 from the microgrant. Again, it is 100%. You will need to have 100% of the funding.
Mike, the last thing we heard was 100% of the funding. All right, we cannot hear you at all. Let's give him one more moment, folks. I'm going to type into the chat box to make sure he knows that we can't hear him, and we'll see if he can get us going again. In the meantime, while Mike is working on that audio issue, I did want to reiterate that the deadline for this grant that he is talking about is this Friday, the 16th, and you should reach out directly to him if you are interested in applying for the first time. If this is the first time you're hearing about it and you're interested in applying, reach out to him. Also, if you have questions about this grant or the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, certainly you can type them into the chat box. And Mike is still online, and so he will be able to see those and respond to you directly, even if we can't hear him. All right, my sincerest apologies. We can't hear Mike, but you can see his slides, and certainly he will be willing to share those slides with you as well. Again, if you have questions, type them into the chat box now. Mike is our last presenter, and we'll be wrapping up shortly. All right, folks, I'm seeing no questions, not just for Mike. Does anyone have any questions for any of our presenters? Okay, then what I'd like to do is just come back to that slide that I have that shows some of the other links that we talked about. Again, the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production is now online, farmers.gov/urban. Also, if you're looking to connect with any of our local folks, the USDA office locator, in which FSA, NRCS, Rural Development, as well as others are listed, you can find our offices at offices.usda.gov. Many thanks to all of our presenters. Pete, Diana, Keith, Dethan, Charles, and Mike, thank you again so much for your time. We have recorded this webinar and we will be posting it to the YouTube channel, and I will follow up with everyone who is registered so that you have a link to view that. Also, I wanted to note that many of you said you'd like to continue to receive updates and news information from NRCS and potentially from our partners. And so There is no unsubscribe button. If you'd like to stop receiving those informational emails, please just hit reply and we will take you off of that list. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. And again, follow up with any of our presenters if you have more questions, or myself, and I will direct it appropriately. Thanks. Have a great day.